Welcome to Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast. In this podcast, we delve into the non-clinical aspects of dentistry with inspirational guests from across the profession. You will hear incredible life stories, pick up valuable business tips and be entertained. I'm Andy Acton and I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Drevens. Some people are just driven, aren't they, in every sense of the word of what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, it's a very interesting story. The bit I loved was that she knew what she wanted at 13.
Yes.
I had no idea. I mean, 13 is just amazing to think, I'd quite like to be that. Rather, and just went for it.
Yeah, I love the bit, and for people listening, it's around about the 25-minute mark where she talks about the process for decision making for somebody who has had to make and continues to make so many decisions because obviously she's got two practices, a family, a business team, all the elements that are in there. She's making lots of decisions, but I love her logic for how she does that.
And she's still young.
Yes.
That's I think the interesting thing. She's achieved and done quite a lot. And the thing I liked as well was the fact of she knows that what she did was hard work, but she didn't see it as a super big risk.
No.
And that's confidence and understanding and planning, all those sort of things that to try and reduce the risk factors.
Very inspiring individual.
No, really good.
Really good episode. Here we go. Exciting one this week.
It is. Aren't they all exciting though?
They are, but this one I'm looking forward to.
The variety. I'm interested in talking a bit about the practice because it looks absolutely stunning, but I know that it will be a bit of a journey to get to absolutely stunning.
Award-winning practice.
Award-winning, yes. I've seen the plasticky holdy things or whatever it is. Yeah, brilliant.
So let's get the introduction done. So today, we are delighted. We have Martina Hodgson joining us, and Martina's a dentist and practice owner of two practices, the Dental Studio in Wakefield, which she's had for a while, and more recently, Dental Architect in Leeds, and also the co-founder of Inspiring Women in Dentistry. Welcome, Martina. How are you?
I'm good, thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure.
Welcome.
Our pleasure.
You're welcome. We've got, it feels like we've got an awful lot to get through. I mean, we could just do a whole episode on the Dental Architect in Leeds. It feels like a fairly new practice, but it's been open for a little while now. But you charted it so well in terms of over a year. Wow. But before we get to the dental bit and dive into your career in more detail, was there a time you can look back on your childhood and say, this is why I am the person I am today? What was your childhood like?
I don't think I had a lovely childhood. It was just very, very stable, very happy. I can't really look back and think there's any one particular thing that happened or anything like that. I mean, my mum will sort of tell you that I was very kind of independent from a very early age, kind of strong-willed and headstrong and, wanting to tie my shoelaces really early and all that kind of stuff. So I think I've always been quite independent and
Where did you grow up, Martina?
I'm actually an Essex girl.
I say, because your accent is not a northern one.
No, so I actually grew up in Essex till I was 18, and then I went to Leeds University. So I was obviously there for 5 years. Then I went back down to London. I was in London for about 4 years. Then I met my husband, who's from Leeds. And so we moved back up to Leeds because I really like Leeds anyway. And that was in 2005. And then I've been here ever since. So I have a very confused accent. I'm confused.
And there's certain words that you sound very northern.
Yeah, definitely. But I think when I'm with Southerners, like as soon as I get off at King's Cross and I get into a black cab, I become proper Cockney. You're right, just trying to say, yeah. And then, like, as soon as I get off at Leeds, I become northern again. So,
but I think it's really funny with accents. My father's from Manchester, but he qualified as a teacher. Went to Chester College, qualified as a teacher. Came to London when he was in his mid-20s. But he still has certain words. And he went back to a school reunion. It was a 50-year school reunion fairly recently. And he was up in Chester and Manchester for 2-3 days. When he came back, like home to London, his accent had changed. And I find it amazing how we morph ourselves to our environment so quickly if we're in a different space.
Definitely. And I think it's important in a way to kind of, it's that empathy thing, isn't it? When you're talking to patients or with teams, and to kind of, I remember when I came up, and although I've got an Essex accent, everyone thought I was really posh just because I would say bath instead of path and things like that, instead of path. And do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
like that, I can't change my fundamental pronunciation. Like it would be weird. But then, yeah, I've definitely got a twang when I want to.
So how did you meet your husband?
Well, actually, I went to university with his brother, who was in the Kaiser Chiefs. So I was friends with him at university. And then I was down at a gig in Brighton, and his brother was there, who actually turned out to be my husband. So I actually met him through my brother-in-law.
Okay. I was just trying to work out in my head the chances of going to Leeds, then coming back to London, then meeting your husband from Leeds. But the chances on that must be quite random. And then now that explains why.
It was through my friend Nick Hodgson, who was the drummer.
Oh, well, okay, right. Excellent.
So you decided at a pretty young age that dentistry was for you, and I understand you were 13-year-old with your own braces, and that was a point at which you decided you wanted to be a dentist. Quite remarkable, so young.
Well, I just thought it was really interesting and cool, and I've always played the violin and piano, so I played that from quite an early age, and I also have always obviously really liked science subjects as well. So I'm quite dexterous, but I really like the science side as well. So it kind of, for me, is that really nice marriage of kind of art, dexterity and science that all come together within dentistry. So that's kind of why I went down that path. But really, I did decide I wanted to be an orthodontist, actually.
I was going to say, did you want to be an orthodontist or a dentist?
I wanted to be an orthodontist. And then when I went to Leeds University, I didn't really understand the orthodontic training at all. So it put me off. So then I just went into general dentistry, never really thought much about it until things started coming out that were more aimed at the general dentist, like the in-man aligner came out. And that's how I started to get into it. So that was about 13 years ago. And then that kind of piqued my interest again. And then I went on the courses and just got much, much more in depth with it.
Did you work that all out yourself, that you had a mixture of skills that were well disposed to dentistry, or were you getting kind of careers advice through school that it might be something that would be good for you?
No, I think the careers advice at school was to be a nurse. But yeah, no, to me, I was like, it was just a no-brainer. I couldn't think why I wouldn't do dentistry. It just seemed I seemed to have all the skills necessary for it. So I think it would, that or medicine, but then I felt like medicine, I didn't want to stay up late. I don't want to work nights. So yeah, for me. It was that or actually being a professional violinist. So they were the two choices for me.
Oh, wow.
And I just felt there was more career stability with dentistry.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because quite often you hear dentists say it, or you sort of feel that there's the dexterousness of and the ability to do sort of this bit, but also they need the creativity. And then with your violin and your piano, there's that creativity music part, isn't it? Yeah. So in a way that builds you into also being the orthodontist you are, because they sort of all fit together, don't they? It's fascinating. I think it's the getting that little mix right.
Well, I've seen people kind of explode out the word dentist, and they say it's like a dentist, an engineer, and an artist, and you can see how it kind of does. You've got all those elements. So you went to Leeds University, and you were saying that you were the first person in your family to go to university. That's quite an interesting thing for you to pick out of part of your story. Why is that important to you?
I think I'm just quite proud of the fact that everything I've done, I've kind of done without a help. You know, obviously people help me. Obviously it's teamwork to get to where you are, but no one's kind of handed me anything on a plate. I didn't have parents who gave me a nice lump sum to invest in a practice. You know, when I first went to my first practice, that was me going to the bank and asking for the money and sleepless nights and just doing it on my own.
How old were you when you bought your first one?
So it was when I moved back up to Leeds, I became an associate at the dental studio, and that was in 2005. And I was there about 2 years before I bought one of the two partners out. So I bought one of the partners out in 2007, and then the other partner retired probably about, it must be about 8 years ago now. And then I bought her half out. So it was a kind of really nice gradual entry into
transition as such, yeah.
And it wasn't anything that I ever dreamt of or wanted to do. Like, I didn't really want to own a practice, but this guy who just kept banging on at me till I bought him out. And because I'd been there quite a few years and I just loved it and I loved the people and the team, I just thought, okay, well. And when I look back now on the amount of money that I borrowed at the time, which I was having sleepless nights about, I'm just like, oh my God, that was such a bargain.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. Like, you just can't buy a practice for that now. So
no.
You know,
but also I think sometimes in the early days of all of our business careers, having a bit of kind of naivety in there just to kind of go with it because it seems like a good idea isn't a bad thing. I think now, and as you get slightly older, you kind of analyse things a bit more, and you do get in your own way of doing things. Whereas I think when you're younger, you're much more gung-ho to go about it. So how long were you an associate for before you bought in as a partner?
I think not very long, but
was it just 2 years?
Well, at that practice, it was 2 years. So I qualified in 2001. So It was 6 years after qualifying. Yeah.
Right. Okay. But
what's interesting is you didn't perceive it as a risk.
No,
I don't feel that listening to you, don't sort of thought, oh, you might have worried a bit about once you've done it, but not so much doing it.
I'm not a risk averse person. I really don't mind taking risks at all. Educated risks. And to me, it was a very well-established practice. I already had my own patient base. I already knew the team. I knew the ins and outs. I was going in with a partner who'd been at that practice 20 years. So, the only risk was borrowing the money, I suppose, and it all going tits up. The only loser then is the bank. So,
yeah. And they could afford to lose it.
Exactly. He said, you don't need to, it's like when the bank has sleepless nights, that when you need to worry.
There's no...
That same bank manager, David Marsden, he's still my bank manager today.
Wow.
So I've got this really long relationship, which is so nice. And he's out west. And, he's just so supportive. It's been great.
Which is good.
Which is interesting, because so many people have got to that stage but not borrowed the money.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we see
they wouldn't have pushed that button.
We see a lot of people who are just serial tire kickers. They love the idea that they're going to own a practice and they go and view practices, but they never quite take that step. In your case, it was signing that offer letter, borrowing the money, taking over. So credit to you for doing that, because there's a lot of people that like the idea. So you've obviously been in an environment where you've been an associate. You then worked in a partnership, and now you're sole principal of your two practices. Not that many people kind of go through that kind of being in a partnership and then being a sole principal. Having the experience of both, which would you say you prefer? Do you prefer having a partner, or are you a driven woman who wants to have it all her own way?
I would never have a partner again. That comes from years of experience and obviously the confidence that comes with that. I felt very held back for a long time, and as soon as I was able to fully take over, that's when I started doubling turnover, and things really took off because I was able to implement the things that I wanted to implement. For example, one of the first things I did, and it sounds crazy, is I got digital x-rays, and then I got a TCO, and I was one of the first practices, in Yorkshire to have a TCO and to have a scanner. There was no way that, it's a different generation of dentists who was my partner. She was going to let me have
What worlds were you operating in, Martina, to decide that a scanner was important for the future of your practice and you needed a TCO? What kind of part of dentistry were you being exposed to have these ideas, or was this just instinctive for you?
It was instinctive because I've always been really passionate about the patient journey. And so I feel like if you can give your patients an amazing patient journey and look after them really well, the rest will follow. And so to me, the TCO was that step up in terms of patient experience and patient care, and something that no other practice was offering. So it was a USP at the time. And then in terms of the scanner, that came because I just at that time, I got the TCO and then I just started doing the Invisalign. So it started to all come together because suddenly I was like, oh, my TCO can now help me with the Invisalign. And then I could see where the scanner would come in. But again, it was an educated risk because buying a scanner at the time, I think it was, well, even now they're still really expensive. I bought an iTero and I think it was about, I don't know, £30,000, which was a huge amount of money. And you know what? Well, I asked my accountant and I said, do you think I should get this scanner? And he was just like, yeah, all the practices that have a scanner are more profitable. So when your accountant tells you to buy a scanner, you're like, okay, I'll buy a scanner. And I actually worked it out that it took 3 months to get my money back from that scanner.
Wow.
In the increased number of Invisalign cases that I sold.
Well, that's a good return on investment, isn't it?
Yeah. So I've got 4 now.
Brilliant. So you've been obviously going right back to your teenage years when you had the braces. That was the kind of the light bulb moment about dentistry and particularly orthodontics. And then you qualified and you were general for a while. But you've actually been involved in orthodontics now for 12, 13 years, something like that. It's been a big part of your business.
Yeah. So I think I'm not an orthodontist. I'm just a general practitioner. But my practice is pretty much 95% dedicated to orthodontics, particularly Invisalign. And I've spent a lot of time and done a lot of courses. So, I did a 2-year fixed course with Jonathan Sandler down in Bakewell. So that taught me how to do really, big extraction cases, treat children. Then I went on to do I was in the first cohort of the clear aligner diploma. So that was another 18-month qualification. And again, just like experience, just surrounding myself by people that I can learn from as well. So I do kind of like hanging out with orthodontists. So I know there's that traditional kind of clash between general practitioners and orthodontists, but I think I hope that I have the respect of orthodontists. I'm never going to say I'm a specialist. I'm never going to say I've got that skill set.
Out of interest, Martina, why have you never pursued the route of getting to a stage where you joined the specialist register?
Yeah, because by that time I got 2 kids and a practice, and it just felt like that ship had sailed.
Right. Yeah.
And I actually think I've got best of both worlds, to be honest.
So you don't really lose out, do you?
No, not at all.
I like that I can finish the cases myself. I like that I can do that multidisciplinary dentistry and plan the whole case myself and deliver it. I like that. So
yeah, and I think as time's gone on, there's no doubt that many years ago, and I could end up upsetting a lot of orthodontists here, it was a true niche and a speciality. But I think with the advent of technology, a lot of it being driven by Align, I think orthodontics has become way more mainstream, particularly on the clear aligner side, than it was many years ago. So I think it's easier for general practitioners to have an orthodontic element within a general practice than perhaps it would have been 10, 15 years ago. You've also been involved in this world for a while. How have you seen that evolution of clear aligners change over the last sort of 10, 12 years in practices? The movement.
Boom.
Yeah. I think obviously it's just so widespread now and so many dentists are doing it. And I think it can be a little bit worrying, the lack of knowledge that people are going into providing clear aligners. And I can see that is going to be a big problem. And I see, these cases come into my own practice. Like I had a lady yesterday come in just the IPR, that had been done. It was, I could cry. It was awful. And, the case wasn't finished. The teeth were still crooked. And that is really, really concerning. And
did she think her treatment had been finished?
No, she wasn't happy. She wasn't happy with the result. But she said, this dentist who'd done the treatment had told her she was one of her first cases and all this kind of stuff. So I think that it is a bit worrying, dentists that are going into it with zero knowledge. You know, they do a 1-day certification course and they come out and they don't really know where to start, which is where my new course comes in. So I've just launched, I'm going to get my plug in. I have just launched, it's called the Aligner Launchpad, and it's a 2-day course specifically aimed at those dentists who've like just done a day's certification and then just feel like, yeah, maybe they're not ready to commit to an 18-month diploma, or like the other courses that are out there are a little bit advanced. It's really just to give them that little bit more knowledge and
did the signal just go then?
Treat cases safely. Yeah. So if you're interested, you can visit my Instagram.
No, honestly, Martina, we'd be very happy if you could send us the link. We'll drop it in the show notes.
Amazing. Thank you.
We'll drop it in the show notes, because the reality is anything that can help dentists improve their skills,
professionals,
you know, it makes sense to share that, because I think you're right. I think in any market where there's an explosion and a growth, the risk is that some people move too quickly and they're not prepared for it. And because there's obviously a proportion of the population that might be litigious, you don't want to be storing up problems down the line. So the better informed and trained and educated people are, the better.
Puts up everybody's PI cover.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the trouble is you don't know what you don't know. That's what's scary.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. So you were happy toddling along, running the dental studio, and then back in 2022, which obviously was in the pipeline way before that, you then decided to set up a private squat dental practice in the centre of Leeds, which is the Dental Architects, which if anybody listening hasn't seen it, Google it for sure, because this is an amazing looking practice.
Looks terrible.
It's an amazing looking practice.
Doesn't look like a practice, does it, really?
No.
You know, apart from the chairs, but when you look at the whole reception, and you've been very clever with the, you know, the patient videos and stuff like that. It doesn't look like a...
No, it's very smart. So a squat practice is an incredibly hard thing to do. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard was it? Because most people only ever see the end result. You know, the bit before that doesn't necessarily get seen.
Can I ask a question before you answer that? Did you think of it pre-COVID?
During COVID.
Post-COVID?
It was during... Yeah, so it was a completely opportunistic thing. My husband's in property and he just bought this building, this beautiful like neo-Gothic 5-story building in the centre of Leeds, and he wanted me to come and have a look at it, and we didn't have much else to do, so I went and had a look, and it was like a complete building site. So they stripped, it was gutted, so there was no floors, no ceilings, no walls, nothing. And I just walked in and it like hit me. So I wasn't looking to open a practice or anything like that, but I just kind of, all I could see was like this Invisalign practice. And then it just kind of went from there, really. So it was a complete opportunistic thing, which is me all over. I get these stupid ideas, and then it just went from there, really. Kind of snowballed out of control. It was too late to turn back.
Once you'd committed.
Yeah, and I told too many people.
Man, that's probably quite a good lesson, isn't it? If you tell people, it has to happen.
Well, yeah, but I think with goals and all those sorts of things, I think if you start telling people, it puts pressure on you to
makes you accountable in a sort
of
bizarre
it through,
way,
doesn't it? So how tough was it? Did it go to plan? Did it go to time? Did it go to budget? Or did you miss all of those things?
None of that. So out of 10, I'd say, how hard was it? Like 100. Yeah, obviously, think of a budget, triple it. Did it go to time?
Now, the budget thing, though, Martina, was the budget because you misjudged, or was it one of those ones of when you start to see it evolve, you just got more excited about, so you added?
Yeah, I think you stop, you know, when it's kind of, you think, I've got this opportunity now, like I've spent years refining my patient journey. I'm building my whole new practice around this patient journey, and you can't compromise because you know you've only got this one opportunity to create something really unique and really beautiful. And I think it really was for me a kind of expression of myself And then my way of, I'm not very good at art or anything like that, but it was my way of expressing myself in a business. It's a weird thing to say, but that's kind of what it was. And so, yeah, I think, it just got bigger and bigger, like physically bigger and bigger as well. Like it was only supposed to be 2 or 3 surgeries. Now it's got potential for 9. I took another floor. It just all spiraled out of control in my head. And that's where we ended up. So,
but you say about that representation of you, I think that's the very best end of private dentistry. I think when you go into practice and it's a reflection of the principal and the team, and it feels quite personal, I think that's for me quite a clear distinction between corporate dentistry and independent dentistry. It has personality and culture and vision.
Well, congruent, isn't it?
Yeah,
with the individuals,
it's led by an individual's vision and passion. I think you see that in what you've achieved and what you've created there. You can see that was created by a person. It didn't kind of go through a corporate machine and that's what got churned out, because it wouldn't have got churned out in that style.
No.
And I think that discerning patients get drawn to that sort of environment.
It would look like every Hilton hotel in the world.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of people that listen to this who we talk to a lot of people who have this ambition of creating a squat practice. What would be your 2 bits of advice to somebody who was thinking about setting up a squat dental practice? You've got to only limit it to 2.
Yeah,
and there might be loads.
One of them is not, don't do it. No.
Yeah, I would say don't do it. I think it's about having a good team around you. So, it depends what your experience is, because obviously I was quite an experienced practice owner. So to me, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I also had years of building contacts with suppliers, builders, my bank, and all that kind of thing. So for me, I suppose I was I had a little bit of a head start in that way, and that I wasn't going into the unknown. I knew exactly in my head what I was going to need to achieve to deliver it. And so that was really good. But if you're you're an associate and you're wanting, you've got no idea how to run a business. You've got no idea, what the compliance is for a start. You've never gone through a CQC inspection. You've never, gone to the bank before for a loan. And I think it's about kind of trying to build those contacts, build those relationships in advance. If you think that's something you want to do, find a builder that you really trust. Just start meeting those suppliers, and because at the end of the day, you are going to be working with people, and it's having the relationships with those people that are going to help you and believe in you. And to be honest, like I couldn't have done any of it without the fact that people just believed in the project.
But also that comes from you, your passion, and you energizing them to be part of that project would have pulled them along.
I was going to say, did you manage the development?
So there was a project manager in terms of the build, but yeah, obviously every stage in terms of the architectural designs, every little last to the plug sockets, I was involved with. Every single part of it.
It's a lot of effort and input, isn't it? Because you're also running a practice in a family.
A lot of effort.
It's like flip. We've got a site meeting. I can just imagine it's like, oh, by the way, we need to talk to you about we found that you can't do this, but do that.
In a weird way, was COVID fortuitous in a way that it actually created some time and space for you to design this out, plan it, and work out why everybody else was making banana bread? You were building a practice.
The practices weren't in lockdown. We were back to work as normal by that point.
So this was after the middle of after June.
After. But I think the other piece of advice I would give is just don't procrastinate with your decision making. Sometimes I think people find it very hard to make decisions. You're going to have to make 100 decisions every day.
Yeah.
And you just have to make a decision, and sometimes it might be the wrong decision and it might not be perfect. And I think too many people wait for perfect.
Yeah.
And I think you can sometimes never get anything achieved if you do that.
I think you're right, isn't it? People are quite linear because they think sometimes there's a right decision and a wrong decision, but actually there could be 10 decisions and actually 9 are okay. They're just different decisions.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to make a decision.
Yeah, I think Barack Obama, he was talking in Brazil, and somebody asked him a similar thing about, you're making global decisions and how do you make them? And he said 51%. He said, when you've got information that means you're 51% confident, make a decision. And then it's exactly what you just said. If more information comes to light, don't be afraid to change your decision. But at least if you make a decision, you will keep moving forward. Whereas if you don't make a decision, basically nothing happens.
That's right. Yeah.
How do you split your time now between Wakefield and Leeds? Because you've obviously got 2 practices that you're running and managing now. How does that work?
Yeah, so I do 2.5 days clinical at the Dental Architect. I don't do any clinical anymore at the Dental Studio. I have an amazing practice manager, Mel, who's kind of made her way up from being my nurse 10 years ago to then head nurse to now practice manager. And then I have Amanda, who's my business manager across both sites and practice manages the Dental Architect as well, who's absolutely amazing. So I feel like it's interesting because at the Dental Studio, my older practice, like today, I just went to the staff meeting. I didn't have anything to do with setting it up, but they're so empowered there now. I've took that control. I'm out of control of that. I just turn up once a week. I have like an hour and a half meeting with my practice manager. And then I rock up at kind of staff meetings and Christmas do's. And I feel like I'm like the nice aunt now, who's the fun parent, because I'm not there every day going, do this, do that. You're not doing that right. Stop leaving that mess. I just come along and like.
How does that sit with you? Because when you described the way you created the Dental Architect, it sounded like there was a lot of micromanagement. You were involved in all the small details, all the small decisions. So whilst some of it was delegated, you were very involved in that process. Yet what you just described at the Dental Studio is that you just described the art of delegation, in that you now have good people. So are you able to kind of dial in and dial out as you need to, or do you find delegating not a natural position for you?
I don't think dentists are good at delegating in general. I find it really hard to delegate, but I have so much faith in my manager. That practice has been running for so long. They know what's expected of them. It's a really, really stable, very, very busy patient base. So I don't feel like I need to be in there micromanaging everything that's going on there, because I feel there's an amazing team. I've got an amazing head nurse and head receptionist, and they run that practice, and they know if you share your values with your team and they understand what the practice values are. And we actually had a session a while back with the team where we actually built our values as a team. And you know what, their value, I have my own core values, and 2 out of the 3 values they picked from all the words in the world they could have picked were the same as my core values. So you naturally, over time, you collect people who align with your core values. And if they don't align with your core values, they leave. So you collect this team. And I went in this morning for this staff meeting, and I just look around, and every time I'm like, I just love you guys. They're great. But when you've got a very new practice, it's a whole different kettle of fish, because it's brand new.
There's no tribe, is there? There's no tribe for people to see how it works.
No. So it's like that process takes time. So you have to be a lot more involved in that. And then eventually it'll get to the situation where that's sort of running itself as well. But it's not going to happen overnight.
Did any of your team from Wakefield move over to Leeds? Or was it a completely fresh start?
No, I've got several associates that work at both sites.
Right.
I had a nurse that came over, TCO that came over. So it wasn't starting from absolute scratch.
So it's a bit of seed there.
So in terms of some of those values and culture, you'd already built something special at Wakefield. So you say, you had a little bit of a start, which was created by you in Leeds already. And then as those new people came in, there was that sort of an embryo of a tribe already, which is interesting. Do you still enjoy your 2.5 clinical days?
I do. I think I would miss it if I didn't do it. I think I'll probably eventually cut it down even more, because I do like the business side of it as well. But I still like my clinical dentistry.
So when you in your given week, what's your best day of the week? Is it clinical dentistry or is it working on the business?
I like both. I feel like, I'll be honest, when I'm in surgery, that's like my comfort zone, because that's like, I'm in control, I'm confident with it. And I think...
And that's the area you spent most of your professional training to know how to do.
But then running a business, I've never done any business training or anything like that. And I think that's hard when you know, so I love it, but it is challenging. But then you can have challenging days in surgery as well. So
yeah. There's a saying which is learn from your mistakes, which I think is a really crap phrase. I think you should really learn from other people's mistakes. Given the entrepreneurial journey that you've had, what tip would you give to people who are kind of starting out on theirs? What's the one thing that's really stood out for you that you wish you'd have known 15 years ago?
I think just to believe in yourself and to be authentic to yourself, because it wasn't until the penny dropped that I didn't really understand what made a good leader or anything like that. And I think the penny dropped for me in COVID, that I stopped listening to what other people were doing or telling me to do. And I started going with my own gut feeling or educated, decisions. And I started realizing that when I did that, life was a lot easier and I was a better leader, because I wasn't trying to be a leader like someone else that I admired or, so I think just be true to yourself. And I think that comes with confidence and age and experience as well. But if you're true to yourself, then you can't really ever go wrong, because you're just doing it your way. And if your way is well-intentioned and ethical and with the best interests of everybody around you at heart, then I don't think you can make a wrong decision. No.
And I think also if you're your authentic self, people can sign in or sign out of that. They might be like, actually, I don't like the way you do that. That doesn't make them right or you wrong, but it means you're going to filter. Your tribe is easier to find because you're consistent in how you are. And like I say, some people will love your style and some people might not, but that's okay. But at least you're going to make sure you've got a bunch of people that kind of follow you for who you are as opposed to who you're trying to be.
Exactly. And I think, as well, people have always got opinion about you, and often it's when they haven't met you.
Always.
I think people are surprised when they meet me sometimes. But it's interesting, isn't it? But you can only just be yourself, and people are always going to have an opinion, and that's fine, because that's a them issue, isn't it?
And the reality is we can't control other people's opinions of ourselves.
Are,
so we just kind of continue as we are. One of the other things that you're very passionate about is uplifting women in dentistry as well, in that you co-founded Inspiring Women in Dentistry. As two white males, it would be very interesting to get your perspective on what's it like to be a woman in dentistry. Are things getting better, getting worse? What are the challenges that you would have that perhaps wouldn't necessarily be obvious to certain parts of the profession?
There's definitely more women in dentistry than there used to be, for sure.
Absolutely. So I think the challenges are changing for women in dentistry. And I think, I can't say I've come across overt sexism that I'm aware of. I think maybe mild sexism, but I know kind of female dentists of a slightly older generation who have literally come across outright sexism, but from that kind of old school male, white male dominated place. Whereas I think there's so much effort going into dentistry now too. As we know, there's more women going into dentistry, but there's actually, I think, you might be able to back me up on this, there's less women owning practices now. Would that be right? From your kind of
the most of our buyers would be males.
Yeah.
I mean, interesting enough though, Martina, I would say that over the last 5 years, more women are buying practices than they probably have done before, which is quite interesting. Previously, it was a rarity But now there do seem to be more women who are saying, actually, no, I am going to buy a practice.
But also, in my experience, women tend to make outstanding principals as well. Because I think quite often their soft skills and the compassion is more engendered in the team than perhaps with men. So I think where women do move into a position of being a principal, they do an outstanding job.
There's definitely a difference between the way men and women run their practices, and neither is right or wrong.
No.
It's different.
If you sit in a room full of female practice owners, which obviously I have, the conversation is around the team.
Yeah.
If you sit in a room, this is just my own experience, but if you sit in a room of male practice owners, which I also have done, the conversation is around money and profit. And you actually need both. You need to care about both to have a successful business, because ain't no business you're not gonna keep people's jobs if you can't make a profit.
Yeah.
But then to make a profit, you need to look after your team. So I think both is really important, and I think we can learn from each other from that. But I think the challenges that women have are different now. I know for myself, like working mother guilt is a huge issue. Right. And, that being torn between spending time with your children and then doing something that you're passionate about in your work. And I feel like...
And is that a self-inflicted mother guilt, or is it society also doing and saying things that adds to that burden?
I think it's both.
Right.
I think it's both. Yeah, I still think there's an expectation of women are the main child carers. Not in my marriage, but I think there are situations and society still expects that, and I think that's always been like that, and I think it's going to take a lot to change it. But I think women also put a lot on themselves in terms of like this desire to be perfect before we do anything, this desire to have a perfect Instagram post of a before and after before we put it on Instagram, this desire to kind of, if I want to buy a business, I want everything to be perfect. And you can't go through life like that. Like, you need to just do everything the best you can, but sometimes you'll never start if you wait for perfect, like I say. Then, you've got imposter syndrome. Men suffer from imposter syndrome. It's so over talked about now, but I think women need more mentoring than women do. I think women need a champion. Women need more female role models, which is what I feel my responsibility is. And that's where I feel I come in, because if I put my head above the parapet, then shots are going to get fired, but that's actually fine by me. And
the thing is, you're strong and confident, so you can be that tall poppy.
Do that for other women.
Yeah.
That's cool. And then there's this this tall poppy syndrome, isn't there? There's this kind of, when and I, until I started to become a little bit more high profile, I never come across it. And then suddenly I read about this tall poppy syndrome where, successful women kind of get cut down, and the studies show it's usually by men. And that was really interesting to me, because it suddenly made a few situations click in my head. And I was like, oh my God, that's what was happening. And I didn't see it. And I think that women are, in general, very, very supportive of each other. But as soon as, and that's very, broad, but this is what studies are proving, when men see successful women, they see it as a threat, or that there's even jealousy. And, I think that comes into play sometimes. And I wouldn't say I've come across it a lot. And I'm so proud to say I know so many men in dentistry who are absolutely smashing it, and they couldn't be more supportive and more amazing. And I have so many good friends who are really smashing it in dentistry who are male. And I almost think it's those that maybe feel like that threat. That's where it comes from.
Well, I think there's a saying, isn't there, about happiness, that everybody wants you to be happy, but just not any more happy than they are. And I think that probably comes through into success as well. That there's lots of people rooting for you to have success, but just don't be more successful than me. that might lead to some people kind of trying to sort of undermine you or pull you back in some way or the other. Yeah, because you have had incredible success. You know, your practice at Wakefield, if you'd have stayed there with that's still a phenomenal practice. But to then go on and do the dental architect and the work you do with Invisalign and your courses, and you are high profile, undoubtedly there are going to be people that want to take a pop shot at you.
Yeah, because I'm a target.
That's just the way it works, isn't it? Which isn't right.
Which is a shame, but it's
a crying shame. It's a crying shame. But credit to you for kind of.
I'll tell you why I don't mind is because those people who do that, they're always the people that don't know me. They don't actually know me. And I'm like, okay, well, say what you want because you don't know me. And the people that know me, if they were to do that, then that would be a different story because that's not personal. So there you go.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. I like to say I've only met you a few times. I think we first met at a course. And you just have an air of confidence about you, which is unusual. Lots of people kind of don't have that presence, and a lot of it may have come from your upbringing and your strong family. Yeah, might be the Essex blood in you, and the success you've had in business. But I think it's inspiring, and I don't think it's just a woman thing. I think it's inspiring generally across dentistry. I think people should be looking at you and other people and saying, look, this is what can be achieved. And I think particularly for women, it's very strong. But I don't think it's just exclusively for women. No. I think if people are successful, they're successful regardless of their sex. I think anybody should be able to look at you and be inspired by it. Martina, we always ask our guests the same two questions to get a little idea as to your thinking. If you could be the fly on the wall in a situation, what situation would that be? Where would you be and who'd be there?
That's such a hard question. I don't have an answer. If I could be a fly on the wall, wouldn't it be really cool? Like, it's just a real general thing, but wouldn't it be really cool to be at like some kind of like amazing legends party, like say like David Bowie had an amazing party or Freddie Mercury, and just like be at that party and actually see what goes on behind closed doors with these amazing
you hope it's as fun and as ridiculous as you imagine, as opposed to literally everyone's just sitting around chatting about what they did last weekend.
No, you want people going around with.
You want the full rock and roll, don't you? You want the full rock and roll.
You want to be the fly on the wall, and actually you don't want to be the fly on the wall with Shane Warne just before he died, because by all accounts that's not a great one, is it? He was a bit lively, was old Shane, wasn't he? He partied. That man partied.
Yeah.
No, that would be good. That would be good to see what the reality of that is.
That would be so fun.
And if you were given the opportunity to meet somebody, you can sit down and have a glass of wine with a person. Who would you like to meet?
I mean, there's so many people, but I think my son Dexter, he's like right into his kind of metal and kind of 80s, 90s rock music. He's listening to Nirvana and Metallica.
Oh, wow.
At the moment. And so I've never thought I would call myself a Metallica fan. I didn't even know who they were, but now I can like name all their 10 albums or something and the backstory. But he's really got into Queen, and I've always loved Queen. You know, growing up, listening to Queen all the time. And one of his favourite bands is Queen. So he's been watching that film, Bohemian Rhapsody.
Wow,
And I think I'll really regret never having seen Queen with Freddie Mercury live, because I just think that would have been amazing. And I would have loved to met Freddie Mercury. Because I just think he was an absolutely fascinating, inspiring character. Incredible showman. Just unbelievable. So just because that's my current theme going on in the house at the moment.
Well, you'll be coming back on again at some point and things might have moved on. You might come back on and say, actually, my son's now into AHA and I want to meet Morten Hagen or whatever his name was.
It's interesting, wasn't there something about Freddie and his teeth as well? Wasn't it something to do with they recommended that they take he had something like orthodontistry or teeth removed, but he wouldn't do it because he said it would change his vocal range. Isn't there something about his teeth or something, his bite or something?
So they said like he didn't want it to change his. It helped his range. He thought it helped his range.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Yeah.
So look, there's a link.
There we go.
Look at that.
Between
Look at that.
Freddie Mercury and orthodontics.
Look at that. Wrapped it all together nicely.
Look at that. Well done. Well done, Martina. That was slick. Like a cashmere codpiece. That was as slick and as smooth.
Martina, we'll let you carry on with your busy world and your busy life and your practice. But thank you so much for your time today. I think it's been brilliant, and we wish you all the very best with your continued success. You've achieved so much, and you've got so much more time in the profession to do more. So no, we wish you the very best for that.
Now. I need life.
There you go. You can climb off the therapy couch and go and have a lay down.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Until the next time.
Excellent. Look after yourself, Martina. Keep well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cheers. Ta-da. Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.